I saw you make a post yesterday reacting to a video where you were talking about the ideal leanness for a guy, and you said it's like roughly 12 to 13%.
Oh, it's the Hormozy and Chris Williamson interview. I love those guys, by the way. I've watched. If you haven't watched their interviews, they're some of the best interviews. The two of them go for. I think their last one they went for like 3 hours and have some of the best dialogue. They had a. One of the things that Chris does when he interviews Alex is he'll repeat his viral tweets. And Alex said something like, get ripped, get rich, don't be a was what he said. And then my team, they know I follow Chris and Alex and like their stuff. And so Danny, one of my editors, came up and said, "Hey, will you do a reaction video to this?" And then I looked at it and I saw the clip and I said, "Okay, yeah, I got something for that." I said, and my point was the first thing I said was like, get ripped, right? And I said, well, let's define get ripped, because the internet would have you believe that most ripped or fit guys are walking around at 3 to 4% body fat, which is unhealthy, unreasonable, not realistic. And if we're talking about the post, which was about how to attract a high value woman, if that's what the goal was of this post, which is that's what it was, uh, being 3 to 5% body fat actually isn't the best strategy. It's actually somewhere between 10 and 15%. All the research points to women are more attracted to a man 10 to 15. Now, that doesn't mean there's not a percentage of women that don't think guys that are super ripped are also attractive, but a vast majority of women say what the look of 10 to 15% is like. And most of those are actually 12 to 13. So that's the vast majority, or 10 to 15. And a majority of those are actually more towards 12 to 13%, which we did a visual so people could kind of see what that looks like. And the average person, or especially the average guy who's motivated to get in shape, would not look at 12 to 13% and put that as like a major goal. They would, in fact, a lot of them would be like, what, that doesn't look that great, but it does. It looks healthy. It looks fit. You can see maybe a little bit of ab development, not like super pronounced. You can see shape to their physique. They look like they're either athletic or work out, but they don't look jacked. And so I wanted to comment on that because I do think there's this perception, and I don't think it's a healthy one, because I do. And I know we talk a lot about women and how we've distorted that look, and we've done such a bad job of making women think that skinny and, no muscle is good. And so we've pushed that. I think we've done similar to men too. I think that men think that they need to be super jacked. Now, the reason why it's not talked about as much is because it's less dangerous for men. If women go below, single digits or go down below 15% body fat, they are going to notice a difference in hair, skin, libido, lose their period. Very, very, very unhealthy for a woman to carry that lean of a body version. Men, on the other hand, they can do it and they won't have as many side effects. And because of that, it's not talked about very much. But the truth is, single digit body fat for most men is not healthy either. Your ideal is somewhere between 10 to 15%. This is what all the research says as far as the most optimal place for health, longevity, and a balance of strength and wellness and athleticism. Even your athletes that run single digit body fat is not optimal. They would do better in the 10 to 15 range. And we've done enough research to prove all this. And so, yeah, the point of my reaction video was more to point out, because I don't disagree that I think don't being make some money and get in shape is probably going to help you attract a high level woman. But I think that perception on the internet's a little distorted for sure on the body fat percentage. And then for sure, I think the getting rich and don't be I think there's a little more to elaborate on that. I said my point to don't be a was, another thing that they talk about is a man that will, on their first date, that knows to ask questions versus talk about themselves. And by the way, this is a huge problem. Like, a vast majority of guys get on dates with women and they just talk about themselves, maybe because they think they need to sell themselves to this woman. But in fact, they will almost always secure a second date, at least, if they can ask questions, right? Talk about the girl, be interested in her, And so I translated his "don't be a" to ask more questions and be interested in the woman sitting across from you, and that will most likely attract a high level. And then the rich thing, the research on that is very clear. It's, most women just want a man that can prove that he can provide, that he can provide for himself and the family, and just how rich he is. Of course, there's a percentage of women that chase that, but for the most part, most good, high value women are just looking for a man that can provide for himself. And so, like 90% of women prefer a man that has created his own wealth over a man that would inherit it. And so, if it was believed that women just want the money, then you wouldn't care if he inherited millions of dollars because then you get it. But when in reality, it's more about this man can prove that he can provide for himself and probably our family and our offsprings is what's most important. So overall, I thought the clip was great. They did. And then that was kind of my take on the reaction to that.
I loved your take and your reaction to it because, like, I think that the body fat thing can be so misleading for so many people, and they have guys that are, like, 30% body fat, and they're like, "How do I get to, like, 5%, 6%, 7%, 10%?" And that 12 to 15 seems a bit more realistic. Um, like, what are some other things that you found that hold guys back from reaching that ideal body fat percentage other than, like, shooting at the wrong target?
So I don't know if I can speak for everybody, but I can tell you what, in my personal journey, what I have found. I was really, I think a lot of men could probably relate to this, which is I was always all the way on or all the way off. So like I was pursuing the 6% body fat, trying to get ripped, trying to get jacked. And diet was on. I wasn't missing workouts. I was avoiding drinking. I mean, I was doing all the things to in pursuit of that. And then when I wasn't, I was doing all the things, eating ice cream, drinking on the weekends, not working out. And so I had this crazy swing back and forth of where my body fat percentage would. And then I let myself get out of control. And then I'd start to creep up into the high teens. Like, oh, okay, time to rein it back in. And then I'd come back the other direction. And I lived a lot of my teens and early 20s like that. As I've gotten older, I've gotten much more consistent with the way I manage that 12. So I'd say I hover around that 12 to 13% pretty much year round with very little effort to do that. In fact, my training volume is ridiculously low right now. I'm lucky if I'm getting 1 or 2 days a week of full body workouts, and I'm lucky. Some of them have been one time. I've even missed a few full weeks in the last couple months. And so really inconsistent with my training. But what I have done as I've gotten older is that gotten away from this. I'm all the way off or all the way on. So I would consider this really low training. In the past, I would just say, why waste my time one day this week if I'm not on it? Like I'm not even on my diet hardcore. Why am I only working out? Where I've gotten rid of that, it's just like, hey, if I can only make it in one time or two times this week, I just make it in one or two times. And then I also manage the diet. And I don't mean weighing and tracking macros. What I do is I'm just aware that, hey, I'm not training a lot right now. So when I really want to go grab a bowl of ice cream in the freezer, I kind of check myself and go like, well, I do want that. And that does sound good right now, but I haven't been working out. Why don't I hit the gym tomorrow? And if I still want the ice cream tomorrow night, I'll enjoy that. But I need to make sure that I get some lifting in so that I'm at least sending a signal in my body to build muscle, and some of those extra calories go to good versus just getting stored as body fat. And so I just, or for example, we ordered Five Guys. When I'm in my hardcore training, and I'm hitting it hard and consistent with the diet, and then the once a week we have a burger. I mean, I'm doing 2 burgers. I'm enjoying the fries. It ain't no big deal because I'm lifting like crazy. Well, I'm not right now. So what the order looked like was, hey, I'll just have one and make it a lettuce wrap on. I'll still enjoy some of the fries, but I won't eat the whole thing, and I won't hammer 2 of those. And so I've just really learned to chill out when I know I'm not training consistently. And I don't have to really track a ton to do that. Now, the caveat to that is that you have to know that I've got decades of training. And I try and preach this to a lot of young men that, man, you put your time in the gym early on, it actually gets easier as you get older, which is, I think, the opposite of what we talk about. A lot of people talk about that, oh, as you get older, you lose this much muscle and it gets harder to do these things. Well, yeah, if you've never done anything and you start at 50 years old, it's much harder than what had you started at 20 years old. But if you're somebody who has been consistently in and out of the gym for, 10, 20 years, as you get older, it actually gets easier. You have that muscle memory it's a very real thing. And because my body has been the 240 jacked bodybuilder guy, it doesn't take a lot of effort in the gym for my body to go, oh, we remember this. I'll pack this back. And so it's actually a lot easier in my mid 40s than it was trying to build that original muscle in my early 20s. The training and stuff that I did back then was so much more to get half the results that I get by going to the gym now. And a lot of that has to do with, and I tell people, it's like investing, the compound interest, or you may not have a lot of extra money to save and invest, but if you start young and you just put a little bit away consistently, then that compounds over years. And then maybe when you're in your 40s, that little bit of money you were putting away is actually a pretty big number now because it's compounded over years. Well, lifting weights and building muscle is like that. If you just kind of chip away at it as you're younger, keep putting effort. As you get older, actually, a lot of that works to your benefit and makes it a lot easier to kind of manage a healthy physique because you've built muscle. And so, yeah, it's actually not that hard to maintain between 12 to 13% body fat at all. It doesn't require any macro tracking, any hardcore regimen for me, just a nice balance of, hey, if I'm not working out, don't eat like if I am training, I can allow myself to have those things occasionally, but for the most part, that'll hover you around it. Now, it's not going to get me to be the most impressive guy in the gym. I'm not going to pull my shirt off and everybody go like, look at that. Like, it's not going to get that kind of attention, but it'll keep me very healthy by living a life that way. And so I think we've overcomplicated it, because we're all aiming for the 4%, us guys I'm speaking to, aiming for that 4 to 5% body fat. And it's very, very, not only is it difficult to get there, it is so hard to stay in single digit body fat because the percentage is so low, it doesn't take too much to be off on the diet to get that to jump 1%. It's like crazy how that works. As you get leaner and leaner and leaner, you have less and less things that you can get away with and still maintain that body fat percentage. And really the 12 to 13% range is pretty easy to kind of manage with good flexibility, where you can still introduce the occasional drink or the occasional dinner out, and training 2 or 3 times a week. So not as hard as we make it to be sometimes.
And it gets overwhelming, I think, for guys who are like 30% body fat. They're like, how am I going to get down to something like 12% or 15%? And they get just stuck. Like how can people overcome some of these mental blocks that keep them from actually making that move to transform their body?
No, good question. So let's take somebody who is at 20, 30. I think the mistake that they make is they right away jump towards trying to be the bodybuilder guy who carries his meals and is like killing it in the gym. Like somebody who's 20, 30% body fat as a man, and you're getting back in the routine, you really need to only focus on a few things that will really move the needle. And why that's so important is not necessarily because it will move the needle so much faster than the guy who measures, tracks all his food, works out 7 days. No, it's that it's more sustainable and realistic, and it's more likely not to cause a, huge fall off and rebound the other direction. So what it looks like is that person is like, let's just focus on 2 things. One, get to the gym 2 to 3 times a week, train full body. Let's not overcomplicate it. Let's not try and do way more than that. And then let's cut out a lot of the highly processed foods in my diet and go after whole food. Those 2 steps for the person who's carrying themselves 30% body fat will take them a really long way, because people don't realize how much of our overeating is due to all the processed food we eat, because it's designed to hijack our body's natural systems that tell you I'm full. And, Sal loves to give the analogy on the podcast all the time of like, have you ever sat down and can you eat a whole bag of potato chips? Most people would agree. You could sit, if I really wanted to and I was hungry, I could sit down and easily crush a whole bag of potato chips. But that's like 5 whole potatoes. Try and sit down and eat 5 raw whole potatoes or even bake them. It doesn't matter. Like, try and cook with no extra anything on it. I guarantee you don't get past 1.5 before you tap out. And it's just because it is not processed. It doesn't have all the flavors, the crunch, the colors, the added sodium and sugars and the things that make us want to keep eating. And so just taking that person who's at 30%, and the reason why I say this, because you're not putting a lot of restriction. There's a psychological game that I'm doing with that client too, is that I'm not telling them, hey, you can't do this anymore. You can't do that anymore. You need to do this. You need to do that. I'm not giving them this laundry list, all these have to do's that is really setting them up for failure, because most people will inevitably not hit one of those things. And then what you don't want them to do is go like, oh, I didn't get my macros, or I didn't do the gym and this day, the 5th day in a row. And so they throw their hands up and they go the other direction, versus like, hey, let's just focus on 2 things. Let's get to the gym 3 times a week, full body, and let's just cut out that processed food right now. And then once we build some momentum, then we can start layering other things that really move the needle. And so the next thing for me, for that person, is like, okay, now that the processed food is out, we're already seeing results from the 3 days a week turn in, doing great. This has become habit for you now. Now it's like we're 30 days, 60 days down, and you're like, Adam, this is amazing. I'm not counting calories. I'm not training hella hard. I'm just going to the gym 3 times a week and I've just cut that. And I've already shifted my body so much, but I want more. I want more. How do I get to the next level? Okay, well, now let's just pay attention to protein, because the average person underconsumes what they need on a optimal level for building muscle. I know having you focus on building muscle will do 2 big things. One, it'll give you the optimal amount to build muscle, which is going to change body composition. It'll lean you out, right? Speed your metabolism up. So that's the huge thing. The other thing, when we become more protein focused, I also know it's the most satiating macro that we have. And so it will naturally, especially if you're going all whole foods, regulate your calorie intake. So that person, they don't even know I just put them on a little calorie deficit without telling them they have to be in a calorie deficit. I say, just go focus on getting protein. And then that, again, playing a psychological game with them, because we know that if I tell a client, it's kind of like don't blink your eyes. You tell someone don't blink their eyes, and it's like, it's so hard to not blink your eyes. Versus if you don't even think about it, you don't even notice it. So it's really similar to the don't eat this is a worse strategy than saying, go get this. Telling that client to go get protein, I know will cut calories. And so you might go, well, why don't you just tell them to cut the 300 calories? Well, because it's crazy what happens when you do that. When you tell someone that, then it's like they're being restricted, and it's in our nature as humans to rebel and want to rebel. And so now you're fighting this inner psychological struggle of like, he told me I can't. Deep down, I really want you, versus I'm not even going to tell you you can't. I'm going to tell you, go do that thing. So then that person goes and they hit protein intake. You got somebody now 3 months in who was 30%, we're going to say 30% body fat. All they did was the first month or 2, cut out processed foods and eat whole foods and go to the gym 3 times a week. Now we're on to months 3 and 4, and all we're doing is hitting our protein intake. I guarantee that person, by this time, if they've followed those steps, just that is already getting down to the teens. That 30% person is closer to 19% body fat now. And now we're in striking distance of the 12 to 13% range. And then really now would be getting them to create more activity throughout the rest of the week. Walk. And I would just be like, all right, during this time, I might have that person monitor to give me an idea as a coach, like kind of where they're hovering, how many steps. Just so you know, the average American does less than 3,000 to 4,000 steps a day. So that person who's probably 30% body fat probably also steps only about 3,000 to 4,000. You take their daily steps to 6,000, which, by the way, is like a 45-minute walk a day, and they're going to get that, right? So I just take that person, and I prefer to break it up through the day. So it's not like this one long walk. I just say, hey, after every meal, walk for 10 to 15 minutes. That'll get us to our 6,000 to 8,000 steps a day goal. Just getting them to do that now is going to take them down another 2 or 3% body fat. Now, this person that was at 30% body fat is hovering somewhere around 15 to 17%. And all they've done is a couple things to get them there. They didn't have to weigh and measure food. They tracked protein at one point. They're going to the gym 3 times a week, nothing crazy. And they're going to get there. And then maintaining that becomes even easier once they've built a good foundation of muscle and consistency. And then when the day comes, when they fall off a little bit or make a bad decision or don't get to the gym. So you following those steps literally is going to take that person to that 13 to 15% range. And now it's just a matter of consistency. And honestly, following those steps on beyond 5, 6 months, they'll just slowly get leaner, slowly build a little bit of muscle, slowly get leaner, and then the programming after you've been doing that for about a year becomes more important. We talk about in the early stages of training, you can get away actually with even subpar training, meaning almost any, if you're following the core lifts, right? Bench, squat, deadlift, row, pull-ups, you do shoulder press, you do some of the major lifts consistently 3 times a week. Like for the novice training client is going to see tremendous results. Now, obviously, people like us, we write programs for people that are even more specific, even better. But even if you didn't have access to me or you to do that, you could literally just train 3 days a week, full body, hit the big lifts, try and get strong. That's your focus. That'll take you to that body fat percentage or better with inside of a year, coming from a 30% body fat person too. That's how effective that just those tips are. And I think the reason why those people struggle is because we overcomplicate it. And a lot of people think, especially those people that are 30 trying to get in, they think that going to the gym 7 days a week or running on the treadmill every day, in addition to what I just said, will get them to their goal faster. And it won't. Because you start adding all that other activity into that person, and now you make the building muscle, which is the main thing I'm trying to get this person to do at the beginning, much more difficult. So let's just say that same person goes, oh, I love his advice, but I'm going to run for an hour every day in addition to what he said. It won't work out the way you think it's going to work out, because what will probably happen when you're not getting enough protein, which is probably what's going to happen in the first month, because I'm not having you even track protein. What's going to end up happening is you're going to end up not building very much muscle, because you are sending a signal to your body to have endurance, and having a bunch of muscle is not ideal for that person who's running an hour every single day. And you will not get leaner faster by going that approach. You will get leaner faster following the approach, just like I said, not doing more. And I think that's the mistake, is I think that we tend to want to do more. Everything else in our lives, which I get why this is so difficult. You work hard, you work harder, you make more money, or you get better at your job. You study more, you learn more. You work towards any sort of skill. The sport, the more you work at it, the harder you work at it, the better you get at. Like almost everything in our life rewards us for working harder towards that goal. The problem with that, with fitness, is it doesn't work. It doesn't when it comes to body composition, which means body composition change, which means losing body fat, building muscle. It's a science. And so it doesn't play the same thing that everything else in our life does, where if I just do it harder, I'm going to get more from it. No, you got to do it right. And you got to have the right balance of what you feed your body, because exercise is a stress. So you want this to apply that stress, but you don't want to over apply that stress. And so if you over apply stress and you don't feed the body properly or give it enough rest and recovery, then all that extra applied stress doesn't give you the return that you want. Ideally, what we're doing is we're sending the body a signal to build muscle. And so we want to apply just enough stress that it needs to adapt and do that. But if you overdo that, the body's not going to do that. And then what people tend to do in this situation, because this person wants to lean out and lose body fat, they also eat lower, which is like the worst thing you can do when you're applying that much stress. Like This person would be, who's applying that much stress, would actually be better off probably eating the same or eating a higher amount of calories. But what they tend to do at the beginning, because they're trying to lose body fat, is they reduce calories and then they over apply the stress. And so then what ends up happening is the body never recovers, it never builds muscle, it just burns, burns, burns. And then they get a false signal that they're doing well, meaning they see the scale go down. So that person who wants to lose body fat percentage, who is training 7 days a week, over applying stress, under eating calories, sees a 5-pound drop on the scale, maybe even 10 pounds drop on the scale in the first few weeks. And that's just purely because they're not eating hardly anything. They're training like crazy. Their body let go of a bunch of water. And so they get this huge drop, which makes them believe they're doing the right thing when in reality, they're not. And they're coming for a hard plateau. And then when that hard plateau hits, they go, I was already doing all this activity. I'm only eating this much. What do I do now? And then typically what they do is just do more of both of those. They go, all right, I'm going to start getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning now and doing an extra hour of cardio. And I'm going to start cutting that third meal out now, or eating half the portion size. And what does that do? That gives them another 5 pounds or so. And then they drop that and then they plateau again. And they're like, what do I do? I was at 30% body fat. Maybe they came down to 29 if they're lucky, 28. And they're like, I'm only eating 1,000 something calories. I'm training 7 days a week. I'm doing this cardio. It's like, this sucks. I'm never going to get down to 12, 13%. They throw their hands up and they say, this isn't for me. I don't want to be a person like that. And they give up. When it's like, it doesn't have to be that difficult. And we apply the proper amount of stress to the body, and we feed you the proper amount of nutrition, you will build muscle. And when you build that muscle, it will naturally speed up your metabolic rate. So speed up your metabolism, which will naturally put you in a calorie reduction, which will naturally slowly lean you out. And that is the most effective and the fastest way to do it. But it messes with people's head, because what can happen when you're eating very balanced and you're training just like you should be, the scale doesn't move as fast. Because what tends to happen when you're kind of hovering around maintenance is you're never at true maintenance. Maintenance is really, sometimes you're in a little bit of a calorie surplus, sometimes you're in a little bit of a calorie deficit. And so over the course of 30 days, it's kind of even. You were, 15, and again, we're just throwing out, hypothetical numbers to get my point across. 15 of the days, you were in a little bit of a surplus. 15 of the days, you were in a little bit of a deficit. And then what ends up happening is you lost 5 pounds of fat, but you also built 4 pounds of muscle. And so the scale shows only 1 pound down after a month of training the way I'm telling you to train. And that psychologically messes with people's head. They go, this isn't working. It's like, no, it's working incredible. You built 4 pounds of muscle. You lost 5 pounds of fat. We moved in both directions you want to go. We got your body, and that will actually start to make the body look different. But because we get so caught up in the scale or the mirror that can really deceive us, it throws those people off, and then they go off the rails and go the other direction. It doesn't have to be that hard. But this is where I feel like, this is why having a trainer like yourself, a coach, take people that are like 30% body fat through this journey. It's really difficult if you've never experienced it or had somebody that's a professionalist take you through it, because of all the psychological warfare that happens, because the mind of the scale and the mirror. And so this is why we have jobs, why I don't think it's going away anytime soon, is having a coach tell you as you're going through, it's like, no, Doug, you're doing great. You're doing a great job right now. This is perfect. This is exactly what I want to see. And then going, really? I only moved 1 pound on the scale. Yeah, no, this is great. You built 4 pounds of muscle. You lost 5 pounds of fat. We sped your metabolism up. Like, you're stronger than what you were. Like, this is great. This is great news. You're right on track. That helps when you're going through this the first time, because most people will bail when they're doing way better than they realize they're doing.
So you said that so beautifully, man. And I think it's important for people to understand like how much people tend to overcomplicate things at times. And if they do, it actually makes things worse, like long-term for their fitness goals. I think it becomes a lot harder to go from like 15 to 12. Like I think the leaner you get, I think sometimes like knocking that percentage down and down gets tougher. Like, what adjustments do you think people would have to make if they get down to say 15% to go from like 15 to 12? We will get you back to this episode of the Adversity Advantage in just 1 second, but first, I want to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Timeline Nutrition. Some of my main priorities right now are optimizing my health, wellness, and longevity. And as many of you know, I've been a fan of Timeline Nutrition and MitoPure for a really long time, especially these new longevity gummies. And right now, Timeline has a special offer that you can get 20% off your first Timeline purchase. And there's never been a better time to experience the benefits of MitoPure. And if you use my code Doug at checkout, you will receive 20% off today. If you've been thinking about trying Timeline, this is your sign. Once again, they're offering my audience a 20% discount on all first-time purchases. So use code Doug at checkout to get 20% off, or go to timeline.com/Doug to get 20% off. Again, timeline.com/Doug to get 20% off your first purchase of MitoPure and Timeline Nutrition. Now back to the show.
15 to 12, that much more difficult. I think that's still another place where you can still have a lot of balance. You probably still don't have to weigh and measure and track food. I think really the difference between the person who went from 30 down to 15 was the 30 down to 15. If you just follow the things I said, I'm also factoring in, which I didn't say, but I'm factoring in, there'll probably be some headaches, mess ups, not perfect days you missed the gym, days you probably ate that thing you knew you weren't supposed to eat. You can still have those kind of along the way of that journey of 30% down to, so long as you're overall improving from where you were before you started this journey, right? Like an example, what I mean by that is like, say this person's at 30%, eats out every day, enjoys the dessert, loves drinking on Saturdays or Sundays. And like, that's kind of their lifestyle. And that's kind of where they got to the 30%. And so now they're on this journey and they're eating whole foods and they're doing the things I'm saying, but they still have the occasional, like, oh man, I had some dessert on Friday. And then, we went out to dinner and I had a couple glasses of wine with my wife. And so you can do some of that and along that journey from 13 down to like high teens and still have, those days, sprinkled in there. As you get to the 15 coming down to 12%, you're minimizing those. There's less of those. Or the option is you're kicking up more activity. So we took that person to like 6,000 to 8,000 steps. Now maybe the person's moving more like 10 to 12,000 steps a day. So that person that was going 68,000, that took them down to kind of the high 15 to 17%. We can also attack it that way and go, you know what? Are you enjoying the walks? Do you have more time that we can walk? Yeah, absolutely. I could do that. Okay, well, then let's kick you up to 10 to 12,000 steps. That person moves to 10 to 12,000 steps. That alone will start to bring them down to that 12, 13% range. The other option would be less of those days where more days in a row of not having the drink, not eating the pizza, not indulging and staying on the whole food, closer diet. That'll take you there. Again, not tracking, not getting crazy. The only thing we're really tracking is protein. And you'll be down there. You can get, in my opinion, and I know everybody's a little different. So this is, again, I'm overgeneralizing this, but for the most part, most people can get to 10 to 12% body fat without ever getting really granular, like really starting to like weigh, measure, track really detailed, just by creating good habits and behaviors and then being consistent with those good habits and behaviors. Like, it's not like I just did it for 15 days and hey, I'm not at that body fat percentage. I've said, well, no, it's like, this is getting good for months and months and months and you'll continue to get fitter and fitter and fitter, because what's happening, if we are focused when we're lifting on getting stronger, we're progressive overloading the body, right? So you're naturally doing that. So if you were bench pressing 135 and now you're bench pressing 175, even if you're following the same amount of sets and reps and everything like that, you're progressively overloading the body. And so you are sending a signal for your body to build more muscle. And as you build more muscle, you speed the metabolism out and you get leaner. And so as long as you're continuing to get strong, and then the first year or two, someone's lifting career, especially if you're following a really good program, you should be consistently getting stronger, especially when you're feeding yourself appropriately. If you're feeding yourself appropriately, training consistently on a good program, you should just keep getting a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger, which will cause you to keep getting leaner and leaner. And then now it's just a matter of how consistent you be. One of my favorite kind of psychological games to play with a client as they're doing this is because you know it's inevitable. You're going to have a mess up, right? You're going to have a day when you have the wine, when you eat the burger, when you do something outside of the, whole food diet that we're kind of following. And instead of like getting hung up on, oh man, I screwed everything all up. I had the drinks today, or I had the pizza today. Looking like that, you go, hey, that was 8 days in a row that I actually was perfect. I did all the things that he said. I ate whole foods. I made it to the gym. I got my steps in. I hit my protein. And I got 8 perfect days in a row. And then I had that pizza. That's okay. Just tomorrow, we start the streak again. So now my new goal is, can I get 9 days or more in a row? And so then the client is like, okay, let's get 9 days. And then let's say they get 9 days and they celebrate. This is the longest streak I made now. Oh, this feels so good. And they make it a few more days. And then they hit day 13 and then they have something, or they mess up, or they miss a workout, or whatever. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect day again to them. So it's like, it's okay. No big deal. Get back on the horse. But now the new goal is, can we get 14 days in a row of consistency? And if you keep kind of playing this game of, it's inevitable I'm going to have setbacks. It's inevitable I'm going to have the occasional drink or birthday party or something I didn't see coming that kind of threw me off my plan. That's okay. Keep track of how many perfect days you had in a row leading up to that. And then set your goal to just beat that and just be competing with yourself. And that may, for some people, that may start off as crazy as, I only made it 2 days in a row, and then the next goal is, can I make it 3 days? And then the next goal is, can I make it 4? And so, and if you keep kind of playing this game, not beating yourself up every time you have a bad day, or you don't follow the program, or you don't eat the diet, if you just don't beat yourself up about it, go, hey, cool. How many of that was in a row? Okay, cool. I made 13 days. That's the best I've ever done. Start back at 0. Now I'm trying to get to 14 days. And you kind of play that game. 6 months goes down the road and you look back at the whole 6 months, you go, holy, I went 6 months. And of the 6 months, right, then with 180 days, give or take, I literally had 170 perfect days. That's crazy. Never in my life have I gone that long and could say that 90% of my days were eating the whole foods, hitting the protein, and that's incredible. And you will absolutely see incredible change in your body in the time. And by the way, that's building in 10 bad days, 10 days when you messed up along that 6-month journey, which is super realistic and way easier to focus on. And then I just tell that client that wants to keep getting a little bit leaner, like, just keep playing that game of consistency. Try and string more days together and let's see how many you can get. Let's see how high you can get of consistency around whole foods, hitting your protein, getting your steps, getting your workouts in. And it'll blow your mind how far you'll get. And I've seen people get down to single digits that way with never weighing and measuring and tracking. I do find, though, once you get around that 10%, it tends to get a little more granular based off the body type. Some people will have an easier time getting down. Other people get stuck right there, that 10 to 12. But back to how we started this whole podcast. I mean, if you're doing it just to do it, it's fine. But it's like healthy is 10 to 15. And so if you can just kind of hover around that 10 to 15, you're in an incredible place, health-wise, attracting a mate-wise, performance, libido, all the things to maintain that. And it's relatively easier to maintain once you're there.
And so do you think that having a cheat meal once a week is too much for people?
That's not how I would frame that. Because the way I would frame it is, it's probably going to happen. So I'm not a fan of planning for it to happen, because it does create this, what I think is an unhealthy relationship with food, which is, okay, for 6 days, I can white knuckle it and eat perfect. And then day 7, I get that cheat meal or cheat day. And so you're creating this, you're really feeding into the restrict binge relationship with food. I would rather say, let's try and go for as long as you can without a cheat meal, knowing that it's inevitable it's going to happen. And when it does, if it hits on day 5, day 7, or day 9, I don't really care, because I know it's going to happen. And I warn the client it's going to happen. So when it does, don't worry about it. No big deal. You made it 5 days. Let's see now if you can go 6 days without that. And so I'd rather teach them that relationship. consistency of eating whole foods and trying without scheduling a cheat meal in. I think the cheat meal days work really well for the bodybuilder person who is tracking and measuring everything, and they can build the cheat meal into their macros. And I'm very familiar with this. I did it myself, bodybuilding, coached a lot of men's physique bodybuilders and women's bikini athletes, and we absolutely could have cheat meals and things. But there's a little bit more going on there with a athlete that's doing that. We're kind of using it sometimes as we're using the benefits of it because they're training so hard and so consistent, and I have them at low calories that it's what we would call refeed days, not cheat days, because I would always encourage them to choose, don't just go eat a bucket of ice cream. How about go enjoy a bunch of sushi, with lots of rice, and I'm not worried about the sauces and things like that. Go enjoy it. Eat an extra 1,000 calories that day. I'm telling that athlete who has been dialed and restricting for, 6 days to go get those extra calories in that meal. And then we would train legs around that day and really try and benefit from the calorie surplus for a day. The average person, I don't like this idea of teaching this is good, this is bad, be good for 6 days and then reward you. Cause then again, you're rewarding them too. And so we're feeding into what a lot of people have a bad relationship with food of it's like this reward system. It's like, no, let's try and eat healthy because your body will love you for that and it'll appreciate you and you'll learn to like those foods. Life will happen, a birthday will come up, a dinner with the wife will come up. And when that does, enjoy yourself and then get back on the horse and try and do as many days as you can. And then guess what? Reality will hit again. That's the way I like to, build the quote unquote cheat meals in is I know they're going to happen. And so instead of making a big deal around them, scheduling them, I'd rather just say, when it happens, don't worry about it. I know it will, but let's just see how many days in a row you got before it happened. And let's try and build on that and build that consistency around there. That's really how I prefer to use the, kind of cheat meal method.
Let's talk programming. I mean, I know you like to keep it super simple but effective. And you mentioned that if you're using the right program, you can get stronger, build muscle, and that will help people in turn, get to this body fat percentage. What are some of the do's and don'ts of programming for goals like this?
So big do, focus the program on trying to get stronger and lift heavier weight, not burning, how sore am I, how much did I sweat? So that's the big do and the big don'ts that like I think is so important to make very clear is trying to get strong, lifting heavy weights is going to serve you way more on this journey than measuring your workout by how difficult it was, how much you sweat, and how much you burn. That becomes more like cardio, and we want to send a signal to build muscle. And so longer rest periods, 2 to 3 minutes, which for some people is a lifetime. Okay. So 2 to 3 minute rest periods, try and add weight when you can and try and get strong and really focus on the big major lifts. And those lifts are so technical that you could be doing them for not just months, but years before you get really good at it. I mean, I still don't think I'm a proficient squatter. I can be so much better. I'm still working on my bench press. I've been doing this for 3 decades, but yet I still need to work on those movements because they are so high skilled, but that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing that they're high skilled. It's a good thing because the more high skilled it is, the more we can get out of it versus something that is very low skill, like a bicep curl. Bicep curl it has return and it helps, but the like how long it's going to serve your goal of building muscle, building your metabolism, losing body fat is very short window. And that's because it's such a low skill. It's really easy to figure it out. The average person, okay, this is how it works. It's a small muscle. So once your body kind of figures it out, you get kind of strong at it. And then it's just like the returns from that movement pale in comparison to something like a squat, a deadlift, an overhead press, a row, these big compound lifts. The big compound lifts require more skill, more technique. They have a longer track of giving you returns than some of the other movements. The other movements you're going to adapt to faster. They're smaller muscle groups. They're single joint. they're not going to do as well for you. So that would be my advice. And then when you go in the gym, so if you're not trying to sweat and burn like crazy or make it, just a hard workout, try and get strong and approach the lifts as a skill. The same way, if you've ever played a sport, golf, basketball, anything, and you're learning that sport, you don't go out. If you've ever been with a golf instructor or a batting instructor or any instructor for that matter for a sport, they don't give you the club or the bat and go swing as hard as you can, as much as you can. No, you do a swing, then they talk about your grip and your technique and where your shoulders are positioned, and they break down each time you do it, and they take their time. And it's more about just repetition and practice and getting better. It's not about how hard you swing it or how many times you swing it. It's really focusing on the lift and getting good at the technique. If you approach your lifting that way, boy, the return on that is far better than just how hard can I do it? How quick can I get it done? How much can I sweat from it? And so that's my advice going into your lifting. Keep it basic and simple. Focus on the big compound lifts. Treat it like a skill. Don't go after sweat, burn, and how hard it is. Go after the technique of the movement.
And I imagine that there's some other things that people must do if they want to reach a goal like this. Like, how important is like the people you spend time with and some other things that are non like fitness related when it comes to achieving your health goals?
Yeah, it's a really good point and question. Uh, I mean, I'm a firm believer in the 5 people you spend the most time with are going to impact you. And you're an average of those, they say. So sometimes when I'd hire a client or a client would hire me and they had a really negative, unhealthy relationships that they spend a lot of time with, sometimes that has to change. It's really, really difficult. In fact, all the odds are against you that you're going to be successful in this journey. If your 5 best friends are eating McDonald's 2, 3 times a day, don't care about working out, just want to sit around and play video games all day, um, really, really difficult for you to get in shape with that circle of friends. And I normally, when someone says, "What do?" I go break up with my best friends. I go back to high school. No, 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 no. I wouldn't do that. What it looks like is getting busy and spending time with the people that are going to influence you positively. So instead of looking at it like I got to go break up with these friends that are unhealthy for me, I'm going to go after building relationships with people that serve me, people that are going to inspire me to be a better version of myself. That's going to inspire me to move more. That's going to inspire me to make healthy food choices. Though I'm going to start spending more time with them. And then what organically happens is you become so busy with this new circle that is serving this journey that you don't have a lot of time for that old circle. And so it doesn't have to be this formal, "Hey, Doug, we got to break up because you like McDonald's. And I know we go all the way back to high school, but I can't hang out with you anymore." No, it doesn't have to look like that. What you do is when Doug calls you and he's like, "Hey, dude, let's go get a burger. What are you doing?" "Oh, man, I'm already meeting with Adam. We're going to go hit the gym and go lift some weights. Maybe next time, let me know." That's what it looks like. It looks like I'm spending time with those people, more time with those people that are going to serve me. And I do believe that depending on the person or the client, this is either irrelevant or paramount. It's irrelevant if you've already got a great circle of people and support system that are already healthy and you're the unhealthy one of the group. It's irrelevant because those people ideally are going to help you level up. So it's not a big deal. But if your circle, the 5 that you spend the most time with, are not, they are actually connected to a lot of your old bad behaviors around health and fitness. You've got to move on from that. And I know we're speaking to health and fitness, but I think this applies to anything. I remember when I was trying to become more fiscally responsible, I had a bad habit with gambling and blowing money and doing stuff like that in my 20s. And I remember having to evaluate. I had a handful of friends I really liked hanging out with. We had a lot of fun. Why? We spent a lot of money. We did a lot of cool. But I realized that as I was getting older and working towards probably settling down and getting married and stuff like that, I was like, I really need to get this under control. And these buddies of mine that I really like, just are not good for me. I mean, I'm gambling on a Tuesday on basketball games with them. I'm going to Vegas all the time. I'm just like, this isn't good for me. But yeah, man, I really like them. Well, so all I did was start spending time with people that were more conservative with their finances. And those people that I'm talking about, they're still friends of mine. I still communicate occasionally with them, and I might even see them occasionally throughout the year, but I don't spend a lot of time with them like I used to. And I had to do that to really cut those behaviors out. It made a huge difference by eliminating those relationships. And it made a huge difference being around people that were on the opposite end of the spectrum when it came to their fiscal responsibility. And so it's not even just that you're getting away from the people that were a bad influence for you. You're now surrounding yourself with people that are going to encourage you that direction, which actually makes the journey even easier. It's like, how great is it when you're hanging out with a friend and you guys are out for the weekend, maybe you're going to go golfing or something, and you guys want to stop and get something to eat, and you're with the friend who cares about their health too, and they suggest to you like, hey, let's go over to this place because I know I can get a good chicken salad over there, or let's go have this place over here. We can have steak and rice or a chicken bowl over there. Versus the friend who doesn't give a shit about that, who just says like, let's just go into the hut over here and get the hot dogs and nachos. It's like having that other friend or friends that are encouraging those better behaviors makes this journey significantly easier by surrounding yourself with those people.
Last question. What are some tips for people that want to maintain 12% body fat?
Be consistent. Something is better than nothing. This is a bit of me speaking to myself for a long time. I had a hard time with the giving myself permission that just because I'm not killing it and I'm not like getting after it hard in the gym and I'm not eating perfect, I would justify not even going to the gym that day and just be like, why? I'm not even doing any of these other things. Why go waste my time there? Or I'm just not feeling like a 50-minute hour hard workout. I'm just not in the mood. And it's like, so I'll never just go there and just do a barbell squat and leave. That's crazy. That has dramatically changed for me. And I see the difference now of consistently for years having the right attitude, I think, around this has served me as far as my body composition and keeping me relatively fit all the time, even when my diet is not ideal. And even when I'm not consistent in the gym, I've given myself that permission of, yeah, I can just, I don't feel like working out today, but maybe I'll just go there and do 3 sets of squats. That'll only take you 15 minutes, Adam. You can do that. And by doing that, what I have found, one, I'm consistent, really consistent with at least getting the gym at once or twice in a week, which I know is not ideal for me being the fittest version of me and the strongest version of me, but it's really kept me in that body fat percentage we've talked about, even when it is just a short 3 to 4 sets of squatting. It helps maintain that muscle. And what I also realized is that what ends up happening probably 50% of the time, maybe more, I go there, I get those 3 sets in, and then I'm like, oh, I could do a little bit more, or oh, I feel good now. Now let's get a full workout in. And so, but it started with me giving myself that permission that something is better than nothing. And so I can just go do a couple exercises because I don't have the energy to do a full hour, but I can muster up to do this 1 or 2 things. Giving myself that permission that it doesn't have to be this intense 50-minute workout has made a huge impact on maintaining that body fat percentage.
Adam, always love our combos. You always just tell it like it is, which I love. So thanks so much for coming back on the pod and delivering your wisdom again.
Always appreciate seeing you, brother.